What secrets lie within the primordial forces that shaped every civilization, every consciousness, every quantum field that vibrates through our reality? Tonight we embark on a journey through the thermodynamic foundations of existence itself, where ancient wisdom meets quantum mechanics, and where the survival of our species depends on understanding forces that transcend physical matter. The mass extinction coefficient calculations show we are approaching critical tipping points, yet few understand that the solutions lie encoded within the elemental framework that every ancient civilization revered as sacred. These were not primitive beliefs, these were sophisticated understanding of energy matrices that modern quantum physics is only beginning to comprehend. Consider this. As biodiversity collapse accelerates at unprecedented rates, as climate tipping points cascade through Earth systems, the ancients possessed knowledge of elemental harmonics that could reverse entropy itself. What if the four classical elements, earth, water, fire, and air, represent quantum field configurations that determine not just matter, but consciousness evolution and planetary survival? The survival matrix indicates that civilizations which maintained elemental balance thrived for millennia, while those that disrupted these energy foundations collapsed within centuries. Ancient sages understood thermodynamic principles that our current scientific paradigm has fragmented into isolated disciplines, missing the unified field theory that connects elemental forces to consciousness shifts. First revelation. Earth as gravitational consciousness. Earth represents more than solid matter. It embodies the gravitational force that binds reality together. In quantum field theory, gravitational waves carry information across space-time, and ancient civilizations understood Earth element as the information-carrying capacity of consciousness itself. When early Greek philosophers like Empedocles identified Earth as one of four fundamental roots, they weren't describing mere soil, they were mapping gravitational consciousness fields. The entropy acceleration we witness today stems from our disconnection from Earth's informational matrix. Every step we take barefoot activates quantum entanglement between our bioelectric field and Earth's magnetic resonance. Indigenous survival practices demonstrate how maintaining this connection through earthing protocols enhances immune function, reduces inflammatory responses, and synchronizes brainwave patterns with planetary frequency. But here's where survival urgency intersects with mystical revelation. Earth's magnetic field is weakening at exponential rates. The magnetic pole shifts occurring now create gravitational anomalies that ancient traditions predicted would coincide with consciousness evolution or civilizational collapse. The choice becomes clear: reconnect with Earth's gravitational matrix or face extinction probability scenarios that increase daily. Second revelation. Water as informational fluid dynamics. Water demonstrates quantum memory storage capabilities that challenge conventional physics. The ancients understood water not merely as H2O molecules, but as crystalline information networks capable of storing and transmitting consciousness data across vast distances. Japanese researcher Masaru Emoto's experiments with water crystallization under different consciousness states revealed what shamanic traditions always knew: water responds to intention at quantum levels. The thermodynamic equilibrium of our planet depends on water's informational integrity. As industrial pollution corrupts water's crystalline structure, we simultaneously degrade the informational networks that connect all biological consciousness. Climate tipping points accelerate because water can no longer maintain the informational coherence necessary for atmospheric stability. Ancient civilizations positioned temples and sacred sites along water meridian lines, not for aesthetic reasons, but because they understood that water's informational flow patterns determine collective consciousness evolution. The survival implications become staggering when we realize that consciousness shifts during ecological collapse depend entirely on water's capacity to transmit coherent information between interconnected awareness fields. Could magnetic field disruption connect to spiritual awakening through water's enhanced conductivity during geomagnetic storms? The correlation between solar activity, water molecule restructuring, and documented consciousness expansion events suggests that our ancestors timed ceremonial practices to leverage these informational amplification windows. Third revelation: fire as transformational energy catalysts. Fire represents the electromagnetic force that drives all transformation at atomic and consciousness levels. When ancient traditions spoke of fire as divine spark, they were describing electromagnetic field fluctuations that catalyze phase transitions in both matter and awareness. The strong nuclear force, what binds atomic nuclei, operates through electromagnetic principles that shamanic traditions access through fire ceremony protocols. The extinction probability calculations show that our current energy systems are depleting resources faster than regeneration cycles can sustain. Yet fire element, properly understood, offers unlimited energy potential through electromagnetic field manipulation. Ancient sages understood thermodynamic principles that allowed them to access zero-point energy fields through consciousness fire element integration. Tesla's experiments with electromagnetic resonance confirmed what firekeeper traditions maintained for millennia: consciousness can direct electromagnetic fields to create free energy systems. The pattern interrupt occurs when we realize that our energy crisis stems not from resource scarcity, but from forgotten electromagnetic harmonics that ancient civilizations used to sustain abundance for thousands of years. The survival urgency intensifies because electromagnetic pollution from our technology disrupts the fire element's natural frequencies. Every electronic device emits electromagnetic signatures that interfere with biological fire element processes, disrupting cellular energy production, degrading immune responses, and blocking consciousness expansion pathways that require electromagnetic coherence. Fourth revelation: air as atmospheric consciousness transmission. Air governs not just respiration, but the weak nuclear force that enables consciousness transmission through atmospheric medium. Ancient breath practices weren't merely exercises, they were sophisticated technologies for accessing quantum information fields that permeate atmospheric layers. When Buddhist traditions speak of prana, they're describing weak nuclear force manipulation through conscious breathing protocols. The biodiversity collapse we witness correlates directly with atmospheric degradation that blocks consciousness transmission pathways. As industrial emissions alter atmospheric composition, we simultaneously disrupt the weak nuclear force networks that enable telepathic communication. Intuitive guidance and collective consciousness coordination necessary for species survival. Ancient civilizations understood that atmospheric consciousness transmission determines whether species evolve or become extinct during planetary transition periods. The survival matrix indicates that civilizations which maintained atmospheric purity through air element practices successfully navigated climate shifts, while those that polluted atmospheric consciousness networks collapsed during environmental challenges. The revelation becomes profound when we realize that consciousness shifts during ecological collapse require clear atmospheric transmission channels. How might quantum consciousness accelerate planetary healing through restored air element frequencies? The answer lies in understanding that thought itself travels through weak nuclear force pathways that atmospheric pollution has severely compromised. Fifth revelation, elemental quantum entanglement networks. The most stunning revelation emerges when we understand how all four elements function as quantum entangled networks. Earth's gravitational fields, water's informational matrices, fire's electromagnetic catalysts, and air's consciousness transmission systems operate as unified quantum field configurations that determine both material reality and awareness evolution. Ancient civilizations designed their societies around maintaining elemental quantum entanglement coherence. Their agricultural cycles, architectural orientations, ceremonial timings, and governance structures all function to enhance rather than disrupt elemental field interactions. The thermodynamic equilibrium they achieved allowed sustainable abundance that modern science claims impossible. The entropy acceleration threatening our survival stems from elemental quantum entanglement disruption. Industrial civilization has systematically broken the coherent field relationships between earth, water, fire, and air elements, creating thermodynamic chaos that manifests as climate breakdown, biodiversity loss, and consciousness fragmentation. Yet the same quantum entanglement principles that created our crisis offer unprecedented opportunities for rapid healing. When consciousness aligns with elemental quantum field configurations, the healing acceleration can reverse decades of damage within months. Ancient practices demonstrate how collective elemental ceremonies can influence weather patterns, restore ecosystem balance, and catalyze consciousness evolution simultaneously. Sixth revelation, elemental frequencies and DNA activation. Recent quantum biology research reveals that DNA responds to specific electromagnetic frequencies generated through elemental interactions. The double helix structure functions as an antenna system that receives and transmits information through elemental quantum fields. Ancient traditions understood that DNA activation depends on exposure to coherent elemental frequencies that industrial environments systematically block. The survival implications become extraordinary when we realize that our evolutionary potential remains locked within DNA sequences that require elemental frequency activation. Climate adaptation capabilities, enhanced immune responses, telepathic communication potentials, and extended longevity all depend on elemental frequencies that our ancestors accessed through daily elemental practices. The mass extinction coefficients show that species currently evolving have DNA that responds to elemental frequency combinations unavailable in polluted environments. This suggests that our survival depends not just on environmental cleanup, but on restoring elemental frequency coherence that enables DNA evolution necessary for planetary transition adaptation. Seventh revelation, collective elemental harmonics and social coherence. The most profound revelation concerns how elemental balance within individuals creates collective social coherence that determines civilizational survival. When populations maintain elemental harmony through daily practices, their collective electromagnetic signatures create social stability, cooperative decision-making, and sustainable resource management that can last millennia. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that civilizations with the longest sustainability records maintained elaborate elemental balance protocols at individual and community levels. Their governance structures, economic systems, and conflict resolution methods all reflected elemental harmony principles that modern psychology is only beginning to understand. The survival matrix indicates that our current social chaos, political polarization, economic instability, resource conflicts stems directly from collective elemental imbalance. When populations lose elemental coherence, they become susceptible to manipulation, unable to think long-term and incapable of cooperative responses to existential threats. Could ancient practices reverse entropy through collective elemental harmonization? The research suggests that communities which restore elemental balance protocols experience rapid improvements in health, creativity, decision-making capacity, and environmental harmony that seem to defy conventional causation models. Eighth revelation, elemental consciousness and planetary immune response. The most startling revelation emerges from understanding Earth itself as a conscious entity with an immune system that responds to consciousness fields. The four elements function as Earth's consciousness interface, constantly monitoring and responding to the collective awareness states of planetary inhabitants. When civilizations align with elemental consciousness, Earth's immune system supports their thriving. When they disrupt elemental harmony, planetary immune responses create conditions that force evolutionary adaptation or extinction. The climate chaos we're experiencing represents Earth's immune system attempting to restore elemental balance through increasingly dramatic interventions. The survival urgency intensifies because we're approaching immune response thresholds where planetary corrections become irreversible within human timescales. Yet ancient traditions demonstrate that consciousness evolution can trigger planetary immune system cooperation rather than resistance. When human collective consciousness aligns with elemental planetary consciousness, Earth's immune system begins supporting rather than correcting human activities, leading to climate stabilization, ecosystem restoration, and resource abundance that seems miraculous from conventional perspectives. Ninth revelation, time-space elemental configurations and prophecy. The final revelation concerns how elemental configurations create windows in time-space where prophecy becomes possible and dimensional boundaries become permeable. Ancient civilizations used elemental ceremony configurations to access information from parallel timelines, communicate with interdimensional consciousness, and influence probability outcomes through consciousness intention. The quantum mechanics of prophecy involves elemental field alignments that create temporary space-time anomalies where past, present, and future information becomes accessible to prepared consciousness. The survival implications become extraordinary when we realize that guidance for navigating our current crisis exists within parallel timelines where humanity successfully transitioned to sustainable civilization. The extinction probability calculations shift dramatically when we factor in consciousness accessing parallel timeline information through elemental portal protocols. Ancient prophecies about our current period weren't predictions. They were intelligence reports from parallel timelines where similar challenges were successfully resolved through elemental consciousness restoration. The transcendent integration, becoming elemental guardians as we reach the completion of this journey through elemental mysteries. The profound truth emerges that our survival depends on becoming conscious guardians of elemental harmony. Every choice we make either supports or disrupts the elemental quantum fields that determine both planetary health and consciousness evolution. The ancient sages understood thermodynamic principles, showing that small changes in elemental coherence create massive shifts in reality through quantum field amplification effects. A single individual maintaining elemental balance influences elemental fields across vast distances through quantum entanglement networks. Communities practicing elemental harmony can shift weather patterns, heal ecosystems, and catalyze consciousness evolution in entire bioregions. The survival matrix indicates that we've reached threshold moments where individual elemental consciousness choices determine collective species outcomes. The parallel timelines where humanity thrives show populations who embrace their roles as elemental guardians, understanding that personal spiritual spiritual practice and planetary healing represent identical processes operating through different scales. What happens when consciousness shifts during ecological collapse? The answer reveals itself through elemental wisdom. Consciousness evolution and ecological healing accelerate together when human awareness aligns with elemental planetary consciousness. The ancient practices that once sustained thriving civilizations for millennia await our remembering, offering pathways through current crises toward futures where abundance, wisdom, and elemental harmony create paradise conditions on Earth. The choice becomes luminously clear: embrace our destiny as elemental guardians, or face extinction through elemental disconnection. The forces that created all civilizations now call us to conscious participation in the greatest transformation our species has ever attempted. The elements themselves await our awakening to the quantum shamanic potential that lies dormant within every human consciousness, ready to birth new Earth realities through elemental mastery and planetary service. The time of the elemental guardian has arrived. The quantum fields are aligned. The ancient wisdom has been transmitted. Now begins the great work of restoration through elemental consciousness, the work that determines whether our species evolves into cosmic citizenship or fades into extinction coefficient statistics. The choice, quantum shamans, rests within your elemental awakening.